If you understood, you know that my song isn't about cherubs, cherry blossoms, or a charming prince. It's an empty rocking chair, a wind chime, a chromatic harmony, a holler, a wrinkled shadow, a distant heart, a familiar stranger with calluses on his feet, a wanderer eating rice with bare hands. Blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to gather the soil, blue notes to part the sea. Crossing is hard. Cross is heavy. Caterpillar can't swim, horse can't fly. Blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to gather the soil, blue notes to part the sea.
Thank you, Elaine. Oh, welcome to Poetry of Immigrants. We've got a very special session today, good variety of poems. But most of all, we have Elaine Nadal, who has a new collection of poetry coming out. And we have Fred Hashemian, who's going to share with the reading. And they're a pair. And they read well together, too. I'm Frank Crowley. This will be our 23rd show. And we're grateful to have a full staff. Max, Deborah, Ken on cameras, and of course, Christopher Morgan, and Christy. So, settle in, welcome, open your ears to new sounds, which is going to be so joyful. I'd like to start off, as I usually do, with a poem out of Lao Tzu's The Way of Life, Tao Te Ching. And there are 84 sayings published, but the translation's the key. Witter Bynner, 20s, 30s American poet who went to China for 5 years and has come out with, I think, the best translation of hundreds, believe it or not. This is number 47. Again, The Way of Life, according to Lao Tzu, translated by Witter Bynner. There is no need to run outside for better seeing, nor to peer from a window. Rather abide at the center of your being, for the more you leave it, the less you learn. Search your heart and see if he is wise who takes each turn. The way to do is to be. Now that's vintage. Lao Tzu. Had you heard of him before?
I have.
Great.
I have.
Yeah.
But have to read more.
This was a find, and Westbrook Library bought it after I brought attention to this special translation. And of course, Wayne Dyer, with his multiple self-help books, really took off on this. There are about 6 books he's published with the heart's core of Lao Tzu directing his book and his self-help process. Really cool. Of course, how did I think about him? Well, in the local restaurant, there was just a little line posted, and I happened to stop and look at it. Quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I was like an epiphany, one of those moments in my dotage where I stop. Oh, I've got to learn more about him. And here we are. Welcome, Elaine. I'm so excited I can hardly sit in the seat. You were a guest 5 times on this show, which is like, whoa. And Fred came twice.
It's my second time, yeah.
And I remember you were standing there
running the camera as well. It's fun, a lot of fun.
Running the camera. Thanks for backup. That was wonderful. So I'd like to draw attention to that wonderful poster, which your students made?
No, actually, the illustrator. She was responsible for the cover art. Her name is Gisleni Brito. So she made the cover art for me. She's fantastic,
It's
wonderful
cover
artist.
art.
Yeah,
Colors.
yeah.
Yeah.
She was fantastic.
So that reminds me of the last few lines of the poem you recited. Blue, blue,
Yes.
blue. Could you read that again?
Blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to, blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to gather the soil, blue notes to part the sea. I've actually haven't shared that, so this is like the first time I'm sharing it, you know.
Oh, a brand new poem.
Yeah, it's in my book, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
Good. It's
but
a
I haven't shared it with, you know, this is the first time people hear it.
Oh.
In full.
And there was something a little bit before that. Could you read again a little more slowly the second stanza?
Well, it's I just said that one, so it's blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to gather the soil, blue notes to part the sea. Crossing is hard, cross is heavy, caterpillar can't swim, horse can't fly. Blue notes to wash the soil, blue notes to gather the soil, blue notes to part the sea.
Cross is heavy. Crossing is hard. That's deep.
Thank you.
And works. Yeah. So we have a lot of blues here. And I don't think too many of the poems are blues poems, right?
Well, the whole idea, I think, with this chapbook, it's very special to me. It has 32 poems altogether.
It's a chapbook?
Yes.
32 poems.
32 poems, and the poems are in English. And there is this theme of blue, not just as the color, but blues also the genre, the music, and how it helped people survive. I think that the whole concept of music and the arts is really prevalent in the chapbook. And I hope I communicate that really well, because I think that music, at least I know music, the arts, poetry have helped me through many tough times, and I think it's very cathartic and therapeutic. So you definitely see those themes, and when those lines, crossing is hard, cross is heavy, I mean, we have to go through so much. There's trauma, pain, so my book definitely deals with that, with trauma and pain, and what someone does to cope with those, with the trauma, with the pains and the sufferings of life. So you definitely see those themes throughout the book. It kind of reads like a story, actually.
Oh,
yeah. So
they're connected.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the reader sees those connections, but yeah, they're definitely connected.
Well,
yes.
certainly thematically with the blues.
Yeah.
How I love that as a way to cope.
Yeah.
Cross is heavy, a way to cope with life. That sounds so universal. That's a real plus. And probably a fabulous strength to go to universal humanism, which links all of us together in a common human experience, which is fraught. Crossing is hard, and bearing a cross. I love your imagery, as I said, I think 5 times when you were here.
Yeah.
That's what drew me, I think, to you. Gemma's not here, but let's say thank you to my co-host, Gemma Matthewson, who recommended that Elaine come.
I love her. She's great.
She's great. Yeah, she runs that once a month Poetry Institute, third Thursday in the Institute Library in New Haven. And she'll be here.
No, next month?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
November 29th. Wow. I also love the way the graphic cuts to the chase, so to speak. Sweat, dance, sing, cut. Did you come up with that?
With the title?
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Of course.
Yes.
The period is essential as well. That period.
Yes, it is,
In the-
isn't it? Emphasis.
It's so interesting because when I wrote these poems, I had actually a different title, and then it came together like towards the end. And then because there is actually a poem that has that line, sweat, dance, sing, cut, and it's the whole idea, you know, of working, you know, hard, diligently, and the pain. And a lot of people ask, well, where does the cut, you know, come from, and what does that have to do? There is a poem about cutting sugar cane, so it goes back to historical, and then also cutting toxic things out of your life, you know, things that really hurt, painful, anything, if we're just cutting the toxic, I don't know if you want to say, anything that pretty much hurts you, you can cut it holds you back. You can cut those toxic things out. So ultimately, it is I think a very positive. It is a positive book, and I hope that people see the hope in it, because it is like telling stories and just relating to human nature, to humanity.
It's drawing upon many powerful imageries of childhood as well.
Something
that I love about her poems.
I'm dying to hear a couple more. At random, whichever, because to me now they're thematically grounded. I understand where you're coming from with this collection, and I have a good picture of some of the universal themes. May I say that I think you've grown as a poet, even?
Well, thank you. I hope so. I hope to communicate.
That's what we're all into.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope I communicated.
Grow as a poet.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Oh yeah, it's like you made a huge leap in tapping these universal themes of suffering. So
I actually have one. So this is very interesting because I usually write my poems in English. Yes, I sprinkle some words in Spanish, but this one I wrote first in Spanish, and I was so excited because I didn't think I can write. Even though I speak Spanish fluently, I didn't think that I can actually write a poem in Spanish. So I wrote it in Spanish, and then after I wrote it in Spanish, I translated it, and then I said I'm going to put the English, in the chapbook. So this is the Spanish, and then Freddie, he's going to read the English. So I'll read the Spanish, and it's called El Regalo.
El regalo.
El
What is
regalo.
that?
The gift.
The gift.
Yes. Mi padre no quiso que mi hermano cargara su nombre. Quería romper el ciclo, la maldición de años, el puñal en la espalda. Un nombre fuerte envuelto en hechicerías, pasado por generaciones de magia en polvo, que se olvida y desaparece, y luego reaparece entre las cortinas y sábanas, dejando un olor húmedo con tinte de flores secas, que acaricia y alarma, y aún conserva la fragancia de lo que queda, del sudor, del alcohol, de la sangre, de lo que se ve, de lo que se esconde, de lo que no se sabe pero se siente, en los escalofríos durante el día, en los sueños por las noches, en las voces que se escucha en espacios solitarios. Le dio un nombre sin raíz, un nombre sin cuerda, que sale sin nudos en la garganta, que fluye como el perfume que usa mi padre.
So musical. In Spanish. Yeah.
All right. The gift. My father didn't want my brother to carry his name. He wanted to break the cycle, the curse of many years, the dagger in the back. A strong name wrapped in sorceries, passed down through generations of magic dust. A name that's forgotten and disappears and then reappears between the curtains and bed sheets, leaving a scent of dampness with a tinge of dry flowers that caresses and alarms and still conserves the fragrance of what is left. Of the sweat, of the alcohol, of the blood, of what is seen, of what is hidden, of what is not known yet felt in the shivers during the day, in the dreams at night, in the voices heard in solitary spaces. He gave him a name without roots, a name without a chord, that comes out without a knot in the throat, that flows like the cologne my father wears.
Oh. A little less musical to the ear in English than Spanish, which is why it's wonderful to hear both versions. We've already discussed how musical the language is. Dust, what an image that is. And you start with sweat. There's the sweat. Very good. Makes me think of sweat, blood and tears, that old saying. Thank you very much. I love hearing them back to back that way. And I'm trying to integrate the sound and the music with the meaning as I hear. Could we do that again? Do you have another one?
Another poem?
Yeah.
Sure. So that one was, as I said earlier, regalo, or the gift.
The gift. I love the title.
Well, because names are so important, especially in like Hispanic culture for men. Like, what name do I give? Do I give, to my child? Does it carry a curse? It's just a big deal. Names.
Carry success.
Does it carry? Yeah.
Is it foretelling? Yeah. Powerful, right?
So this one's called tormento. Can you figure out what that means?
Tormento. Tormento. The thing about rolling the R is that the Russians and the Spanish-speaking people actually do it the same way. They do. So if you know Russian, you can speak Spanish. No. You can roll your R, though.
Too. That's I'm pretty good at rolling my R's.
Yeah, he's very good at rolling his R's.
Oh, good.
So this is tormento.
Tormento.
No sé si sueño en inglés o español, en color o en blanco y negro. Solo recuerdo rostros y figuras, sonidos y olores. Sueño con expediciones y viajes, animales salvajes y mascotas en jaulas. Sueño con ventanas rotas y puertas cerradas, a veces abiertas. Sueño con abanicos sucios, con la casa de mi abuela, la casa que nunca vi en persona ni en fotografía. Sueño con puños, espada y machete, armas y fusilamientos. Escucho gritos y llantos. Sueño con personas que quiero abrazar pero no las alcanzo. Sueño con trenes que van y vienen, con bocas sedientas, aguas contaminadas, tenis colgados en una cuerda para tender ropa, pies descalzos y mesas vacías. Sueño con manos que me ahorcan, que no me permiten hablar. Y me levanto así, con un nudo en la garganta.
I'm in love with those R's. That music of the R's. Did you hear the R's? Yeah.
This is the second poem that I wrote in Spanish because, like I said earlier, I always write in English. Mm-hmm.
So judge yourself for a minute. Are you able to successfully go back to Spanish as a poet and write in Spanish?
To me, even though I am fluent in Spanish, I find it harder to write in Spanish
than in English.
Even though, like, after I'm done, I just like the flow. I like how the language sounds. It's just, but for me, it's just much easier to write, in English. But interestingly enough, the two poems that I just read in Spanish, they kind of quickly came to me.
Oh.
So it was once I had the first sentence, I just kept going and I wrote it quickly, whereas in English, when I write in English, it takes me longer, but I write more in English. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, because what I'm struck with in these two poems is the emotional depth of your poetry now that I didn't quite hear a year ago. I heard the echoes. I heard the beginnings, grandma, childhood, the pain, the suffering, the empathy, the connection, but now you've gone deeper emotionally, as I hear it. So I'm even more interested.
Thank you. It's hard for me to share because it's so I really put so much. So I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm stumbling through it. It's really hard to share this collection because it's so. I really dedicated a lot of time, and there's every poem. Each poem is so important to me. So it's really.
Each poem you put your heart and identity into. So. Beyond the emotional depth is a kind of expanding of your process. So one of the questions, and it's great today because you're anticipating all my questions. You're doing it wonderfully. Yeah, it's like, it's like, whoa, it's like the red together and the universe. It's like, whoa. So
we have to tell them that wasn't planned.
No.
A red. Just
no. And nothing about the show is planned. And that's the best part because it's so alive. So that was my question. What is your process? Does it all come at once after you write that first line? But in Spanish it does because it's so close to the bone. It's so from the center of the heart. You can't stop writing, right?
Once I have the idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That is so powerful, and that's so helpful for us as poets to know the difference in the process. Some write more cerebral, let an idea sort of germinate, Wordsworth. Recollected in tranquility, we talked about that at one of the shows, later, after the experience. No, you're white hot when you're writing that in Spanish. But English, there's some distance, emotional distance, maybe. How fascinating.
We saw Billy Collins up in Hartford a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And, he talked about the process and how, you just have to write, but he, demystified the process somewhat by saying sometimes when he starts a poem, he's thinking, well, how do I get out of this now? So that's how he ends. It was very
Billy
fun.
Collins, he is so accessible and popular these days. So many books in the Westbrook Library. And that's good feedback for me, because I wondered, was he more of a thinking poet or a feeling poet?
Well,
or where does he start?
He also said something very interesting. He said sometimes, figurative language is used to the point where it doesn't have to be used. I mean, sometimes you just have to let things speak for themselves. Like a table is a table, ocean is an ocean. And he was very much inspired by, poetry from China and Japan, and that was interesting to see. So.
Yeah, I could see that. Concise, basic.
Yeah.
Distilled down to its essence. Do you use much figurative language? Your imagery is so across the world, but symbols?
I think that I depending on the poem, I have definitely used like objects that have double meaning, like the title. So then saying cut, it has, the cut part has a double meaning.
The cut part has the double meaning.
The sugar cane cutting that traces back to the suffering and history of the sugar cane workers, and then just cutting anything that's toxic. So I use a lot of that, and a lot of storytelling, a lot of imagery, and it's just whatever comes
whatever
to me
comes
and what I
from
feel.
the muse.
I mean, some poems really frustrate me to write. Like I'll have like a part of it, and then I have to set it aside, put it aside, and then wait until it comes back to me again. And I wait sometimes a month, sometimes 2 months. I write I do other writing projects, and then when I come back to it, I'm like, okay, is it ready now? Is it ready to be told?
Wow.
So it depends.
Fascinating in the process, because it's still germinating down there, even though you're not consciously working on it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes,
yeah.
that's how it.
I'm privy to this process at home, and so I see how amazing it is. How sometimes it could just be one punctuation mark and just a comma placed ever so slightly somewhere, and then she'll go, okay, it's done. It's done.
And meanwhile, Fred, would you clean up the dishes for the spaghetti dinner?
Anytime. Support it as long as I get to read her poetry.
I'm white hot. I'm passionate about finishing this. Oh, I want to ask you about your muse, but I want to hear more poems first.
Well, I would like him to read the English version of what I just read, because
Okay.
So this is, I read Tormento, and he's going to read the English version, Tormento.
Alrighty.
Tormento.
Torment. I don't know if I dream in English or Spanish, in color or black and white. I only remember faces and figures, sounds and scents. I dream of expeditions and trips, wild animals and pets in cages. I dream of broken windows and closed doors. Sometimes they're open. I dream of dirty fans, my grandmother's house, the one I never saw in person or in photos. I dream of fists, swords and machetes, weapons and shootings. I hear screams and cries. I dream of people I want to hug but can't reach. I dream of trains that come and go, thirsty lips, contaminated waters, sneakers hung on a clothesline, bare feet and empty tables. I dream of hands strangling me, stifling my speech, and I wake up like that with a knot in my throat.
People I want to hug. I dream of people I want to hug. That's a wonderful image. So that's a distinction to make in process and also usage. Metaphors and symbols can sometimes get in the way, as he said, right?
Sure.
And you heard him 2 weeks ago. I'm so happy you did.
It's wonderful.
And that is more modernist with Robert Creeley, you know, those tight, get rid of the figurative language, you know. And students have a concern, right? I don't know what the symbol means. You know, I'm in class, I gotta figure this out.
Well, that's one thing that I have a problem with, is because I remember, like, you know, in my English classes, the question that, you know, the teacher or professor would ask, what is the poet or the author trying to say?
Yeah.
And okay, it bothers me because the poet or the author just writes, you know, whatever comes to that. And yeah, we don't always necessarily think of what we're trying to say. No. It's just, we just write. And I think it would be nice to just see the reader just, it's the readers to interpret and to feel and to make something out of it. I mean, many times when people read my work or my poem, they see something that I didn't see and that I didn't intend.
I know that feeling and that experience.
And I love that. I think that, you know, the reader needs to be the one. It's yours. You know,
it's yours.
As there's written, it's
you
yours
need to do the work. Yeah.
And enjoy it, and, you know, whatever comes to mind. So it always that question always bothers me.
Especially the trying. What do you mean trying? He's saying it. You get on it. Yeah. So education is changing with you two in the high schools. Yes.
Me, middle school.
That's
middle
right.
School, yeah.
I keep saying, oh, that's even better. They're opening their ears, their eyes. I want to hear more music. You don't have to read in Spanish unless you want to.
No, it's okay. I did want to add and say, you know, that part of the process of writing too is having a good critique partner.
Oh,
because that's,
yes.
And he is amazing with that. He reads all my work. And
sounds as if Fred's read everything
he
in literature.
And he gives me his feedback.
And you give it to your students, all that knowledge. Yeah.
They teach me sometimes too.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's the best part of it.
Wow, you're a great teacher, just to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. So, I want more.
Well, this is a short one, and this is one of the, I guess, the topics in my book is identity. So there are 2 poems that deal with hair. So I'll read the one that deals with hair, the shorter one.
Okay.
So
hair.
Yes, it deals with hair, yeah.
As in, yes.
So, and it reads like a story, so it'll make more sense when, you know, someone reads the entire book, when they get to read the whole book. But So this is Rising. My hair was free, frizzy greñas dancing with the winds, son, cha-cha, mambo, salsa, divided into sections, each doing its thing. A chaotic consortium of exotic flavors. Jazzy, raspy, sultry, gutsy, swaying, wailing, grooving, moving, dragging, shaking, stepping, pressing, improvising, synchronizing, calling, responding. Nothing could stop it. Gels, lotions, perms, rolos, strong, tenacious, bold, perseverant. It stood up everywhere because it could.
That's great.
Bingo! It stood up everywhere.
Did you feel the struggle of the hair and how it came triumphant?
Yeah.
The hair, triumphant. Let it stick up everywhere. Yeah.
Rolos.
Rolos.
Brava! That's a kicker. That's a wonderful thought. And I could see the dancing and swaying. We're going to take a 3-minute break, and we'll be back. So, go to that Spanish-English dictionary right now on your break. Grab a little something to eat too, and we'll be back.
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He has the crazy strength to lift the man that raised him up without even flinching. This guy, no, this warrior, will always be by his father's side, even if his dad will hardly remember. If this guy isn't the toughest guy on the planet, then I don't know who is. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know. Come alive with the forest. The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Hey, let's check out this park. Oh, wow, that's really cool. To find a great local park or forest near you, go to discovertheforest.org.
These are the dishes that Sandra gave to Goodwill, where Pete found the job that gave him a sense of purpose. This is the dress and the shirt that Madeline gave to Goodwill, where Graciela learned the English that changed her life. This is the dress, the dishes, and the shirt that David and Jackie found at Goodwill. Goodwill, what goes around comes around.
So this is Mayelene. 7-year-old Mayelene believed she could do anything and become whatever she wanted to be. She opened the fridge, took out the 2-pint milk, 2% fat, with an expiration date of October 11th, and poured herself a cup. If everything went according to plan, she'll get her wish by the time the rooster crowed. The stubborn night was in no rush, though. It tucked his head into the shell. Hush, little baby. Mayelene shut her eyes tightly and pictured what it would be like to be the princess on the cup. She was wearing a lavender dress and singing a song she had never heard before, yet was so familiar. She slept awake, listening to the tune in her head, aware of how her fingers tapped during the chorus and how the wind exhaled on her feet. With the tip of her toes, she positioned the blanket to cover her entire body, because closing the window may have led her to miss the welcoming of dawn. As she lay in bed, Mayelene wondered how much time was left before it was complete. That was the last thing she remembered. She couldn't recall the lyrics to the song. She didn't hear the rooster crow. Nothing happened, and Mayelene didn't understand why. For hearing or not hearing didn't change the fact that the crow did sing. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mayelene decided to drink 2 cups of milk the following night. She wore socks and used an extra blanket. When the morning came, she heard his call. Mayelene jumped out of bed and noticed that everything was the same. So she tried peeling it off from her arm, leaving 5 long scratches that resembled an empty music staff. You're beautiful, and you're going to look like a princess after I'm done, her mother said in an attempt to add some musical notes. She scooped the mayo from the jar into the bowl and added an egg and a teaspoon of olive oil. You've got your grandma's hair, she told Mayelene as she covered it with a clear plastic bag. Little Mayelene looked at her unchanged dark skin, felt the bag on her head, and smiled, hoping that her fro would be gone after 30 minutes.
Wow, what an ending. Hoping that her fro would be gone after 30 minutes. That is so sad, so deeply sad. And 7-year-olds tend to go through that. Magical thinking is part of growing up. Wow. I remember it happening. Where did that come from?
Just from stories I've heard from people. I know that there are many individuals that struggle with self-love, you know, and I know that through history and culturally, specifically in the Hispanic community, there is this, it is sad when you don't love, you know, yourself, or when you want to change something that's so essential to your being.
Love yourself
especially
as you
when
are.
you're a child, which is important to see representation of everyone, of every culture.
Acceptance.
And diversity, acceptance. I think it is important to see. I know that, you know, at least when I was growing up, I didn't see much representation of, you know, girls that looked like me. And it takes, sadly, it takes time, you know, and whatever your being or your qualities are, you know, that's a beautiful thing that needs to be embraced. And unfortunately, people struggle with self-esteem and the hair not looking the way, I guess, the society's convention, you know, if it doesn't look like a certain way, or they call it, it's not good hair. You know, what is good hair? I think it came from all those stories and the experience that I've seen many face of self-hatred because of the way they look or their skin color. And what I am glad about is that is changing. We see more representation, and because beauty is, you know, beauty comes in all sizes, all shapes, you know, all colors. And I think we need to embrace diversity.
And beauty is universal. In so many cultures, it's defined in a different way. I can't get that image of the mayonnaise on the head trying to straighten the fro.
And it is important to note too that intent is important. Yes, as women, we want to do different hairstyles and everything, but it is the intent. And if you have that self-hatred and you're trying to get just rid of that, which is, big hair is beautiful, you know. I mean, so it's straight hair, so it's, you know, it's all beautiful, and it's okay to want to just have a different hairstyle, and you know, that's fine. But it is the intent, and it is your emotion inside. And I'm just glad to see that it's changing, and we see more diversity and more representation, especially for those little girls that see, you know, TV and magazines, and they think, oh, I'm supposed to look this way.
It is changing, and it's the negatives aren't being reinforced through programs that actually look at bullying as a reinforcement of the negative in stereotypes. So that's changing too, and. It seems that's a national push, thank goodness, because scratching your skin to try to make it white, and you know, and the vulnerability of young children subjected to peer pressure is always a fact with us. That's very powerful, and a totally different form. It was a story.
Yeah.
It's a narrative poem rather than a lyric poem. As we say, lyrics are that sudden, powerful emotion or identification being covered. Thank you so much for that. That is, that's worth sitting up and taking notice. So what if the audience wants to know more about how to get more information about your chapbook when the time comes? Can they go anywhere now? Do you have a website?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. Just write, you know, Elaine Nadal.
Okay, ELAINE-NADAL.
Yeah.
At. So
you could just search me on Instagram, but to get...
Oh, that's good, just the name.
Yeah, you should be able to find it. Or the title of my book, you can certainly find it, even if you Google it.
You can Google it now.
Yeah, you could Google Sweat Dancing Cut, and it takes you to Finishing Line Press, which I'm very grateful because they're the ones that are publishing my book. So if you just type Sweat Dancing Cut, you'll probably see it, or go to Finishing Line Press and type the title.
SDSC, got it. Sweat, Dance, Sing, Cut. So we've danced with the hair, we've seen the sweat, you sang. Oh, I like that cut part, because that's where the metaphor is, right? And metaphors really can do a lot of work for us, and it does for you. That image of cane cutting really brings me back to Haiti and the Dominican Republic and the workers who they captured in Haiti to bring over to the Dominican Republic to do the work. That's really an image. That stays with me. I've been to Haiti a lot. So, who is the muse that inspires you? Is it an image of a person? Where does your inspiration come from? How early were you a poet? How early in age were you playing with words?
I began to play with words in first grade.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful, because I think that and I know that, I guess I take everything that I've gone through has led me to be here and to write, because to me it's so important. First grade, my first grade teacher, I wrote my first children's short story in Spanish.
First grade?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I am writing children's stories now, and for that my inspiration is my husband. For poetry is my grandmother, because she suffered so much, and I admire her because she was strong.
We talked a lot about her and your experience. One of those 5 shows, yeah.
I love her, and I am also grateful to my third grade teacher because she did extra lessons every day just to make sure that I learned English.
Really?
And I get teary every time I think about it. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to do much in English.
Extra help.
She believed in me.
Just when you needed it.
Extra lessons just for me.
Do you remember her name?
Miss Payot, Mrs. Payot, I do remember.
Mrs. Payot.
Mrs. Payot. And I said, I want to be a writer and I want to be a teacher because I want to do that for people. I want to do that extra lesson. And because, I could have just been pushed aside, left behind, and she didn't let that happen.
Which happens so many
It happens
times.
a lot.
That's a great testimony. Funny, I do too remember Miss Van Zandt. And where else do you draw inspiration? Do you travel? I think you saw that Haitian painter down somewhere.
Savannah, Georgia. Yeah. That's in my book too, that poem. I do travel. I get my inspiration from traveling, from stories. It really, just in general, like what people go through, I get my inspiration from that. My experiences, writers, and not just poets, because I think that you can actually get inspirations from novelists, Like I love Steinbeck. I love
his language.
Yes,
yeah.
I absolutely love him. I also like Arthur Miller, his plays. I really enjoy Isabel Allende. She has inspired me. I like Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Isabel Allende, yes.
I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez as well. So I get inspiration from observation, from my learning, from books, from stories, experiences that I feel that need to be told because they can't be forgotten. It's important to have them out.
And the skills that they exhibit. Love in the Time of Cholera. I couldn't put that book down.
Did you read 100 Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude? It's a masterpiece.
No, not yet.
Oh, it's a masterpiece.
But after that, I realized, wait a minute, look at the power of an extended metaphor. Cholera being compared to the condition of being in love.
Yeah.
Both could be fatal. Wow, what a trope, what a figure of speech that covers the
brilliant.
whole book.
He's brilliant.
And the writing, Well, we're up to a really fun show with only 10 minutes left. I got questions. Do you write poetry?
I do not write poetry. I've written some poems in the past, but as, a habit, an everyday thing as it is for her.
Everyday
I
thing,
don't,
yeah.
I read a lot. That's where I love it.
Well, that's for sure.
At some point, we'll see.
And whenever the muse drops by, it's a wonderful thing. I share your process with sudden, powerful inspiration where a poem just pops out, insists on being, but also other process. Process is really helpful to share as poets. Thank you for being here today in the most exciting way, because your chapbook will be out. A chapbook is a collection of a smaller amount of poems than a full published book, which will come someday. The chapbook is a good, really first step. And every poet wants to be published. That's a natural experience. So let's celebrate by opening up to another poet who lived in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I'm going to read Witter Bynner. And the reason I'm adding him today is because of the power of this, which I read at the beginning, and the 84 sayings, which you knew about, Fred, have a real resonance to us as poets. I mean, I went back to this as an inspiration. Imagine the Chinese, what that would sound like. Had you heard of Witter Bynner ever?
No.
Brand new. And I discovered him simply because I was tracking the quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Who wrote that? Lao Tzu. Who translated him from the Chinese? When did he live? Why am I on this intense path to discover somebody new? Who is Witter Bynner? But it is a question that can be variously and richly answered. As well known early in the 20th century as his friends Carl Sandburg and Edna St. Vincent Millay, she's one of my all-time favorites, and inspirational in the sense that you are a true lyric poet. Bynner was a poet, translator, essayist, playwright, and editor. He wrote over 20 volumes of poetry, most of them published by Knopf. He's a good publisher. Fred, let's share a couple of short poems that Witter Bynner, who is the translator of Lao Tzu, was motivated to write in the 30s and the 40s. Horses. Words are hoops through which to leap upon meanings, which our horses' backs bear moving. That is so Lao Tzu in a sense, isn't it? The short Oriental, Japanese, Chinese, Buddhist, condensed haiku wisdom.
Yes, I'm even wondering, when did he write these? Was it after the translations or before? That'd be interesting to...
After.
Yeah. Okay, well that makes sense.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
That one poet would influence
another.
Tell me another poet that has influenced your style.
A poet, Tato Laviera, Nicolas Guillen, I think are the two main ones. Yeah, Latin poets.
Guillen.
Guillen.
Yeah, Guillen. Yeah, you maybe mentioned him the first time. A sigh. Still must I tamely talk sense with these others. How long before I shall be with you again, magnificently saying nothing? Little echo of Leonard Cohen. I loved you well in the Chelsea Hotel, but I don't think about you much anymore. I'm going to exchange my Leonard Cohen hat for more Western, because
that's great.
What he did is move to Santa Fe. in the 30s, which was before other people discovered it. Down to 5 minutes. Santa Fe, here I come. Where do you hear this? He traveled to Mexico with the D.H. Lawrences in 1923 and wrote an account of that trip that remains a vivid portrait of the people and the times. He lived in Santa Fe from 1922 until his death, which was in the 80s. Yeah. Anyone off the top strike you that you want to read?
I was looking at this poem called Lightning.
Yeah.
Wouldn't mind reading that. Lightning. There is a solitude in seeing you, followed by your presence when you are gone. You are like heaven's veins of lightning. I cannot see till afterward how beautiful you are. There is a blindness in seeing you, followed by the sight of you when you are gone.
What's interesting is the paradox. Blindness and seeing, and yet blindness is seeing. Good choice. Any others?
Fear is interesting too.
Yeah.
This is great. Fear. This day has come like an idiot, blank and dumb, over a lonely road, under lonely skies. And though at first I whistled and strode like a strong man showing no fear, yet I am afraid of this day, you not being here. And I look back and back at this uncouth day, you not being here, and my heart is in my mouth because of its eyes in which nothing is clear.
One of the reasons people go back to a wise seer and prophet like Lao Tzu in the Chinese culture is to deal with daily anxiety and fear. Of course, this would be a perfect book for meditation. And he is such a bellwether for mindfulness and the new way of thinking about internal peace and harmony, that to go back to him in a modern day like this is really therapeutic. I love when you said at the beginning, writing poetry also has its therapeutic element. Can't get away from it. And I could see in the power of your poems, Elaine, how therapeutic it must have been to express the deepest emotional feelings of pain and suffering, and especially that last one. So that's what we as human beings are searching for, I think, in poets, wise men, seers. Lament, let me try that one. There is a chill deeper than that of death in the return of the beloved and not of love. And there is no warmth for it but the warmth of a world which needs more than the sun, or the warmth of lament for beauty which is graven on many stones. Someone was there. I put out my hand in the dark and felt the long fingers of the wind. And yet I would be with you a little while, dear ghost. The moon, red leaped the moon from behind the black hill of night, and soon it was silver forever, and there was no change until its time came, and its setting was as white as a corpse among the flowers of dawn. Such powerful imagistic contrast to in his description. The canyon, so okay, we're out west in the canyon. It is the dead sex of the earth on which the sun still gazes. It is all the mountains of love into whose sarcophagus peers the moon. Wow, that's a wrap, but tell me more. What's next? You're writing stories for children too?
Yeah, it's that, and I've been working on a novel for 4 years.
Oh, you mentioned the novel,
Yeah.
one of the shows. Yeah.
I'm excited about it, but I'm taking my time.
Oh, yeah. A novel is a 10-year prospect. What's it about?
It feels like it's pretty much about the secrets of a Hispanic family that traces back to 3-4 generations.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's juicy.
It's great.
Juicy is good. And do you pull that out of the desk when you have a moment, or you get an idea?
I try to work on something every day. So, like in the summer,
And she reads me passages from it, just little tidbits, and then I want to know more. And it's like, oh no, you gotta wait.
it's funny. It's funny, but at the same time, it deals with really serious, elements, but with humor.
And last question. Do you have a certain time of the day where you devote to your creative writing?
No.
Okay.
It's messy.
Is it? Elaine and Fred, thank you. I've had more fun than I can remember.
Always fun.
Even the Canada show. So, we will be back in November on the 29th, and I have a returning guest. Fred's coming, and he's going to help me with Soviet-era poetry. I have a flag from that end to that end. Thank you. We will see you next month, and a deep, deep gratitude for my guests.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck.
Gracias.